Dyatlov Pass, the mountain that kept its secret. If you ever find yourself talking to the old hunters who once lived near the Ural Mountains, don't ask them about ghosts. They'll probably smile, look toward the frozen peaks, and tell you something far more unsettling. They'll say the mountain simply decides who gets to leave. Sounds like the beginning of a horror movie, doesn't it? But here's the strange part. This story doesn't need ghosts to be terrifying. Everything you're about to hear actually happened. Police reports exist. Search photographs exist. Personal diaries exist. Even the cameras recovered from the snow still contain pictures taken just hours before everything went horribly wrong. That's what makes this mystery so unforgettable. These weren't fictional characters. They were real people who expected to come home. Their leader was 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, calm, intelligent, and highly experienced despite his young age. If you had to cross a frozen mountain range, Igor was exactly the kind of person you'd want leading the way. The rest of the group wasn't made up of amateurs either. They were skilled university students trained to survive brutal Russian winters. They knew how to navigate snowstorms, build shelters, and stay alive in temperatures that would freeze most people within minutes. So if experience wasn't the problem, what was? The expedition began like countless others. Long train rides, heavy backpacks, endless jokes. Someone was always smiling for the camera, while someone else was probably complaining that their backpack weighed more than they did. Looking at those black and white photographs today is almost heartbreaking. They look excited, relaxed, completely unaware that they're taking the last pictures of their lives. As the group traveled farther north, civilization slowly disappeared behind them. Roads became frozen trails. Villages turned into endless forests. Soon there was nothing except snow, silence, and mountains stretching far beyond the horizon. No phone signal, no nearby help, just nature at its coldest. Oddly enough, they loved every second of it. Every evening they laughed inside the tent, joked in their journals, and planned the next day's journey. Reading those diary entries today feels almost cruel because we already know something they didn't. Their story doesn't have a happy ending. Then fate quietly stepped in. One member of the expedition, Yuri Yudin, became too sick to continue. Severe joint pain forced him to make a decision he would remember for the rest of his life. He hugged his friends, wished them luck, and turned back alone. At the time, it felt like the biggest disappointment of his life. In reality, it saved him. Yuri would become the only member of the expedition to return home alive. The remaining 9 hikers continued deeper into the mountains, completely unaware that history was following every step they took. Their destination was Mount Otorten, but worsening weather pushed them slightly off course until they reached a lonely slope called Kolachiachol. The name translates to Dead Mountain. It sounds like the perfect setting for a ghost story, but the truth is much simpler. The mountain earned its name because almost no animals lived there, making it a poor hunting ground. Still, if someone invited you to spend the night on a place called Dead Mountain, you'd probably ask if there was another option. Unfortunately, for the 9 hikers, there wasn't. As the sun disappeared on February 1st, 1959, the temperature dropped below -30 degrees Celsius. The wind grew stronger with every passing minute. They could have moved into the nearby forest for shelter. Instead, they pitched their tent on the exposed mountainside. They cooked dinner, shared a few final laughs, and settled in for the night. It seemed like an ordinary evening. But within a few hours, something would happen that terrified all 9 of them so completely. They would slash open their own tent from the inside, leave behind their boots, and run barefoot into one of the coldest nights imaginable. No one knows exactly what happened after the lights inside that tent went out. That's not because investigators did a poor job. It's because there wasn't a single survivor left to tell the story. Whatever happened that night struck so suddenly that 9 experienced hikers made a decision almost impossible to understand. Instead of reaching for their boots, they reached for a knife. Instead of opening the entrance, they sliced their own tent open from the inside. Think about that for a second. Outside, the temperature was nearly minus 30 degrees Celsius. The wind was strong enough to erase footprints within hours. Walking into that darkness without proper clothing wasn't dangerous. It was almost certain death. And yet, staying inside somehow felt even worse. Weeks later, when the rescue team finally arrived, they expected to find a collapsed tent buried beneath snow. Instead, they found something far stranger. The tent was still standing, slightly covered in snow, but still standing. It looked almost peaceful, until they noticed the cuts running through the fabric. The investigators quickly realized something chilling. Nobody had broken into the tent. The people inside had desperately escaped from it. Then came another strange discovery. The entrance was still closed. That meant the hikers hadn't even used the normal way out. They had chosen the fastest escape possible. Whatever frightened them gave them no time to think. Inside the tent, everything had been left behind. Thick winter jackets, boots, food, cameras, personal belongings. Imagine your house catching fire. What's the first thing you'd grab? Probably your phone, maybe your wallet. These hikers didn't even grab their shoes. That tells you just how terrified they must have been. Following the trail away from the campsite, rescuers found footprints leading toward a nearby forest. Oddly, the tracks weren't scattered like people running in panic. They seemed almost organized. Some hikers wore only socks. Others had completely bare feet. It looked as if the group had stayed together, hoping to survive whatever danger had forced them outside. About a mile away, beneath a massive cedar tree, the first 2 bodies were discovered. They had tried to build a small fire using broken branches. The remains of the fire were still there, frozen in time. Investigators also noticed broken branches several meters above the ground, suggesting one of the hikers had climbed the tree. But why? Were they trying to spot the tent through the darkness, or making sure whatever chased them wasn't following? We simply don't know. As the search continued, 3 more bodies were found between the tree and the campsite. All of them were lying in positions that suggested they had been walking back toward the tent. Maybe they believed the danger had passed. Maybe they thought returning was their only chance to survive the freezing cold. Sadly, none of them made it. The search then came to a stop. Heavy snowfall buried the remaining hikers beneath several meters of snow, making it impossible to continue. It wasn't until spring, when the ice finally began to melt, that rescuers discovered the last 4 bodies inside a narrow ravine. And that's when this mystery became even stranger. Unlike the first victims, these hikers had suffered severe internal injuries. Several had broken ribs. One had a fractured skull. Yet there were almost no visible external wounds. It was as if something unimaginably powerful had crushed them without leaving the injuries investigators normally expected to see. One of the victims was also missing her tongue, a detail that fueled countless terrifying stories for decades. Modern forensic experts believe natural decomposition and scavenging animals are the most likely explanation. But at the time, rumors spread much faster than science ever could. Then investigators found something else that made headlines around the world: traces of radiation on some of the clothing. Not enough to explain the deaths, but enough to spark endless speculation. secret military experiments, hidden weapons testing, or simply contamination from previous work some of the hikers had done. Even today, nobody can say for certain. More than 60 years have passed, and people are still trying to solve the puzzle. Avalanches, powerful winds, secret Soviet experiments, infrasound capable of triggering panic. Every theory answers one question, but creates two more. Perhaps the mountain really did keep its secret, not because of ghosts, not because of monsters, but because nature sometimes creates mysteries that even decades of science cannot completely explain. And somewhere beneath the snow-covered silence of Dyatlov Pass, the truth may still be waiting to be discovered.